I want this young lady to take the leadership and get the tone set.
Thank you. So it's my absolute honor to introduce our speakers for today, and we'll start with Mr. Vikesh Awadi. He is the founder and CEO of Board Stewardship. He is a seasoned board governor, expert, independent director, and board trainer. He has advised multiple not-for-profit boards, shaping future-ready leadership at the boardroom level. Our next speaker is Shalini Singh.
Shall we invite him?
Our next speaker is Shalini Singh. He is a senior communication and brand leader with deep expertise in global reputation management and ESG, having led brands and communication at the RPG Group. It's an absolute honor. Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Prachi. Ms. Prachi is a global talent acquisition leader and HR strategist, driving strategic growth at Petfora by leading high-impact teams across geographies. Please, ma'am. The next speaker is Leena Pillai. Leena Pillai is a seasoned banking professional and a member of the leadership team at the ICICI Bank, bringing strong expertise in large-scale financial operations and people leadership. And finally, it is my absolute honor to introduce this person. He is the president of Bombay Management Association and also a vice president at Wockhardt Hospital. Sir, please, if you will join us. Thank you.
Future president of many organizations. I look forward. I don't look back. That's the way to live. Your God is good. I think the front. Look forward. Don't look backward. Never.
Thank you for joining us. Firstly, I would like to thank all the speakers for accepting our invitation to address our students and also honoring them with the certificates. It is quite difficult to moderate such a seasoned panel, but I'm making some efforts over here. As we all know, all of them are working from different and rich walk of life. So it is a little tricky to amalgamate everything together, but each one holds their own expertise. So I'll ask them the question based on their expertise, and we'll keep the dialogue open for you all as well to ask. So I would start with Vikesh sir. How can boards move beyond intent and actually drive real ESG outcomes, and what governance skills do you foresee that they should hold? Not only for ESG, but also when it comes to net zero or CSR, what are the nitty-gritties that they should know?
Good question to start with. As a matter of fact, ESG is not one thing. ESG is not one thing. ESG is not by one person. It is the only thing that way. Like risk management is not by one person. It doesn't require one particular type of expertise. Risk management is of multiple types. So similarly, in ESG, there are three things: environment, social, and governance. And they require different kind of qualifications. So it is not one person, one man who can represent and do the magic for ESG to be successful. That is the real crux of ESG, which has not yet been cracked. It is so important, but yet the regulatory authorities have not been able to make it a mandatory committee. Because it is not one thing. You have a committee for CSR, we have a committee for audit, which is a clear cut. NRC means HRD. Stakeholders means corporate relations, it means relationship with all the stakeholders. But ESG is vast. I wouldn't say that it is vague. To some people do say that it is vague, but I would say that it is very vast and huge. And you need to cover all these aspects, not one. So as a matter of fact, when you say governance, it covers all the stakeholders. And it cannot be just through a report or by doing one act. It has to be integral part of the strategy of the corporate. The very purpose of the organization. Is it part of the purpose? If it is not part of the purpose, ESG cannot be implemented. The values of governance will not fit in if they are not stated upfront. So it is not one thing. It is all these things which have to be incorporated and they have to be fitted well into the corporate strategy. You cannot do anything without ESG.
Thank you so much, sir. That's very insightful. At least at the start.
Yeah. We'll talk more about it.
Yes, sir. Shalini ma'am, you are an independent director. You have served from Tata's to all the big groups. I don't want to read out from here, but I want to ask you from my personal curiosity. What does it take to reach there? And how do you see that as an independent and as a women director, when you tell them, okay, this has to be there, how much impetus is it given?
Sure. Thank you for inviting me today, and it's a very relevant question. It doesn't take just an independent director to do this, frankly. It's basically a choice that an organization makes at a CEO level, at a leadership level. Also, it's bottom up completely with the entire board owning it, and it's really becomes the entire board's responsibility in that sense to own it. And I will just take an example of Tata Power here, since you mentioned that company. The process that any company follows. What are the key inputs that go into this coming up to the board level? And that is, number one, there has to be a strategic choice, certain strategic choices that a company agrees that I will do a capital allocation for ESG, which means that Tata Power decided that it will put a hard stop to any new coal plants and will move to renewables. Within renewables, it chose solar, because in decarbonization, solar would help it decarbonize faster with more business results than wind. Okay. Now these are, and then how do you then plan your net zero, where you start looking at base power in a country like India, which has still dependent 65% today on coal-fired plants. Therefore, where will you stand as a utility? When you evaluate that decision, the second point that comes in, how will you incentivize the leadership to really do this and constantly look at it as a problem-solving approach and not get demotivated because some law changes tomorrow. To this, the third input that becomes even more critical, and therefore, I will come back to what Vikesh sir has said. Therefore, the third critical aspect of this is, while you make your strategic choices, while you incentivize, what kind of trade-offs are you willing to make? As a board, as a company, as a leader. So you need a very courageous leader to bring up a Shalini Singh in an engineering company when she's not even an engineer, but she understands business very well because you're a CXO, you understand it as much as a power plant engineer understands once you spend a good 17 years there, right? And it also boils down to the leadership quality that the person has. I'm not going to say anything about engineers, but I think perhaps what I had was both left side and right side brain to drive this. Right side is very important to drive ESG because you have to feel the purpose. And not many engineers felt the purpose. They were more into compliance. And therefore, the choice that they made was not out of any gender there, because in a company, in a manufacturing sector, nobody looks at you as a gender. They know whether you can do it or you don't do it. So, but any organization, irrespective of somebody like me, will need that kind of dialogues to happen. And if you're capable of having those kind of dialogues, if you understand your own business, if you do international benchmarking to understand if there is no benchmark in India, we went through a huge benchmarking with NL, with Chevron, who made those movements. So when people say peer benchmarking, I am not a fan of peer benchmarking. What you need is to benchmark with somebody who's better than you. And therefore, I believe in Dow Jones as a metrics because it provides you ready data to measure that. And therefore, in Tata's and again in Holcim, what helped us in Holcim to move faster was Holcim was a Swedish company, and therefore it already had. The Europeans have very strong ESG alignments. They understand that you will. They look at their entire risk management planning for the next 5 years. And which is what I'm finally coming to. Finally, companies like Tata Power, which are hard to abate, also look at risk matrix on where they stand. What are their materiality issues which will wipe them out? And therefore, there is no way that they will make choices which they can see that will wipe them out in 5 years, because most manufacturing companies plan for 5 years still. They are not planning for next 1 year. They're not looking at only quarterly results. And I think that's what sets the tone for a good company, which is a large size manufacturing company, do this better than anybody else.
That's very interesting. And how has it been you as a woman leader in that room and could you share some experience?
So I was fired in my first, so this is, I'm talking about year, so I was just kidding with them, I look very young but I'm not that young. This is my first strategy meet where I was asked to present the sustainability strategy for that particular year. Communication strategy went very well. CSR strategy went very well. I was also the chief of skill development center, so that went very well. Then came sustainability last. And in that meeting, it was bloodshed because I got an approval from the CEO to actually present it, but it's like an open thing which people will start commenting. And my chief operating officer and the head of generation got very, very upset, visibly upset, and got up and said, "You're trying to tell us that we will not have a job in next 5 years, and you're taking away our. If you're doing this, then you're creating fear. And when I go back in the plant, this must have already spread that you're talking about hard stop on." On coal-fired plants. So what will this workforce do? How will I redeploy them? Do you have the answer for that before you made some very, very, big observation? You made some very big points on what sustainability should do, and this is what sustainability professionals do. They don't look at the outcome, and they keep presenting. तुम लोग सिर्फ presentation करना जानते हो. So I was like, fair point. Let me see, how we can do this better. And then there were iterations with the intent that we are Tatas and we don't, do any kind of load shedding of, so-called without having a backup plan. And he also misunderstood that we were talking about the entire power plants of Tata Power to do their entire life cycle, which was still good 15 years. We are saying that either, when we deep dived, we talked about how you have to do life cycle management for the current coal-fired plants. How would you look at, making subcritical plants as ultra-critical and at least, do FGDs for them, which is a cost, but a cost which is aligned to ESG choices. And number of such decisions, which then got refined over the next 5 years. And then Tata Power has already declared net zero. I was still there, so I declared net zero with the blessings of many, but after getting fired many times. But I was used to getting fired. I think when you're the only woman in the room, you should just be a monk. Don't.
That's a good observation.
I think
Good learning.
the key is emotional intelligence. What takes you ahead in your life is to be able to compartmentalize. And I place very high, when I hire people in my team, it's a high pressure function. I place very, very strong, and I'm almost partial to high emotional intelligence, monk, calm people, and should be able to navigate in high pressure and also navigate in what you call ambiguity. I have done that in my entire career. I think I'm a great navigator. I've made mistakes, but I've had some very good mentors who, over a period of time, have been very proud of me for what I was, and I, only by focusing on you know, emotional intelligence. In Hindi, you know, drama नहीं चाहिए, काम चाहिए, you know. So किसी कोई भी drama नहीं, and women unfortunately bring in a lot of drama sometimes. We have to be mindful that we learn from men on how emotionally intelligent a discussion can be.
That's a very fair point. Thank you for bringing across. We all need to be monk in our life in that certain points of time always. So over to you, Prachi. I myself want to learn, and everyone wants to learn. You've been leading in the HR and global talent space. What are the skills that are most in demand for the careers in ESG, and how do you employ people from a long-term perspective? Like for now, net zero. Many companies have like 2040, 20. India has 2070 as a goal. So how would you do it?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for inviting me. So two parts to the question. First question was what skills do you require to get a job, right? I think most of them would be looking out for jobs within the system since they've studied sustainability and they're looking forward to
Jobs or promotions?
or promotions. Yeah. So I'm sure I think in this room I'm the person who knows the least sustainability. So I'm from HR person. Okay, I have some company. But so I'll not be able to speak jargons of the sustainability field. I think you know it better. But what I understand from a hiring perspective is I completely resonate with what Shalini said, that you have to feel sustainability and you have to have empathy for that. And if you don't feel it, you will not be able to succeed in that role. So that particular behavioral trait definitely has to, be showcased. Apart from the hard and the technical skills which you require, which will be more from a business transition perspective, more from a functional perspective, that whether it could be supply chain, whether it would be procurement, whether it would be finance for that matter, whether it would be from a climate strategy perspective. So what I know, and I could be wrong and maybe you guys could correct me, that there are about 7 to 8 different broad areas when it comes to sustainable ESG, and you can look out for jobs in that areas, and you can look at your sweet spot in where you see yourself fitting in. One could be either in supply chain and procurement, one could be R&D, design, packaging, manufacturing, operations. One area could be more from a finance sustainability perspective. I think one more is data reporting is a big thing. Data reporting and assurance is a very big piece which is coming across. Climate strategy and net zero, etc. of course is definitely at the umbrella of it. So find your sweet spot is what I think you will have to first align yourself with, and then accordingly you have a hiring, and then you have a strategy of finding a job. So that is part one of the question. What was the second question? Sorry.
How do you foresee the talent pool? Because every year every 2 or 3 years there is a new term, CSR, then sustainable, now net zero, then ESG. So how do you foresee in the next period, 2070, how many?
I was just overhearing the conversations which we were having before the session, is that many of the organizations have already announced their net zero long back. Yeah. So I think these are only new terms which are coming into play, but at the core of it, the basics always, in any field, right? The basics always and the fundamentals always remain the same. So don't worry about these big jargons and all of that. It's ultimately the core. You have to know what job you have to perform. So yeah, from a hiring perspective, as a hiring manager on the other side of the table, I would, in my opinion and my experience, I would suggest that maybe you should hire not for today but for tomorrow. because net zero is a very, very long journey. It's not going to be overnight, and it's not going to happen like at the snap of a finger. It's going to be like at least a 10-year journey. So you have to have that long-term vision in mind. So hire from that perspective. Keep succession also into picture, because there will be attritions. People will leave. People will, kind of want to go abroad, do a global stint, etc. So it's better to have a succession plan in mind. And of course, train your internal talent. I am a very strong, proponent of I'm a very strong proponent of training internal talent, because they already know your business. They already know the ways of working. They already know the style, etc. Train them, tweak it a little bit. They are your best friend.
Thank you for the inputs. I'm sure they will take these insights and work towards it. My next question to you is Leena ji. So you're leading your ESG and CSR in the banking sector. How do you integrate the concepts in the financial institutions? And what are the larger goals? Because apart from the environment and social, what are the governance-related issues that you have seen?
Thank you so much for inviting me. So I have been looking at ESG and CSR for the last 7 years in the bank. Actually, it is something that I was always reading about, but the opportunity to implement it within a financial sector was something that came about as being part of the investor relations team. As Shalini and my co-panelists have mentioned, European investors were really looking at sustainability in a big way. They looked at it more from a risk perspective. They thought that there was an ESG risk that was playing out, and Indian companies need to be cognizant of the risk. While we started the journey, obviously the first part to it is all about building your disclosures, the narratives. I would put the entire thing into 3 parts. One is around the work that is happening at the government level. SEBI has now mandated top companies to start making disclosures on ESG. So there is the business responsibility and sustainability report. So it is a sector agnostic thing. Irrespective of whether you are in the financial sector or any other company, you need to do this. And it is about 160 parameters talking about E, S and G. All each and every aspect of this is being taken care of. So this definitely is a trigger point where companies have now started looking at, because these disclosures have to also, some of them have to assure it. So once there is an assurance to be done, automatically you will look at processes, the governance around it, the data that is being disclosed, the targets that you need to take, the metrics and targets for the place. So that was the regulatory piece. Apart from that, as a highly regulated sector, I mean financial companies are also regulated by RBI. RBI looks at more of climate risk, because they see climate as a major part where banks are exposed to risks as well as opportunities. It's not just about risks, but from a climate perspective, there is also an opportunity for banks to drive transitions and also look at helping companies to be able to decarbonize. So that's where the whole thing around carbon neutrality targets and all is coming. The other part that is there is more about looking at how a bank or any company looks at. So I would break that into 2 parts. One is on the more easier one to do, which is in our own operations, where it is more about bringing in renewable energy into your premises, greening the premises. So you have certifications today. The Indian Green Building Council is there. You have LEED certifications. So there are certain mandates about how you manage your waste, managing water, looking at circularity. So these are areas that one would look at. And the other side is obviously for companies, at least for financial companies, there is a big thing called the data centers. So data center play a very big role in energy consumption, and greening the data centers is a huge area in itself. In all these transitions, of course, the first thing one needs to do is, of course, measure your own carbon footprint. So the whole concept of scope 1, scope 2 emissions, understanding where are the hotspots in those emissions and trying to transition. As we have gone about this, we have realized that the major areas that are there, it needs technology. Without technology, you cannot really be able to transition. So technology means also R&D in this space. So there's a whole gamut of areas that are there, which starts from looking at research and development, adoption of that at a commercial scale, and then coming to companies looking at these concepts. There are a lot of proof of concepts that we ourselves do at our end because we are not sure about the scalability of some of them. Some have succeeded, some have not succeeded. So it's an experiment that keeps going on. So ideas become very critical here. So we are always open to talking to new people, talking to companies that have come up with or say startups that have come up with new concepts around it, because that's where the ideas flow and you understand whether you can really implement this at scale or not. For financial sector, the other part is on the business strategy, looking at lending side. So as financiers, we have to start looking at ESG aspects. The way banks have started looking at it, where they are embedding it as part of their business strategy, is to start engaging with the borrowers. So whether it is a steel company, a power company, any sector, the hard to abate sectors, the SMEs, the small and medium enterprises, because they also need to understand that these transitions have become important. As India also has a target of 2070, decarbonization is part of everyone's journey. In fact, I would not say that it is only corporates, but individuals like us also have to, be conscious about consumption, looking at, how we embed circularity in our own lives also. So it's a thing that happens across every individual, every institution. And as part of that, we have now started talking to our borrowers. So some of the large borrowers are already doing this. I mean, if you look at the big names like Tata or Birlas, and so those companies already understand. They have a CSO who's looking at this. They are themselves transitioning. Many of them are also talking to their value chain, the supply chain, which actually involves some of the SMEs, of how they can start embedding sustainability. So we do have engagement sessions where they are making them aware about what they can possibly do, what they should look at, which are the low-hanging fruits you can start adopting. So on the borrowing side, we do actually start engaging with borrowers. We are trying to understand the risks that may be there within their own business strategies. And it is more about helping them to transition. We would not say that I will not lend. As in India also today, we are not saying we are not going to do coal sector, right? So as a bank, we cannot say that I will not support this initiative and not support the transition. So one needs to do it in stages, and that's how we are looking at this entire aspect. To your second question around governance, governance plays a very important role. See, at the end of the day, the entire thing has to come from the top. The management needs to be aligned to understand that this is something that one needs to do and good to do. And it is a long-term thing. ESG is not something that happens today. It is a journey. You start today and you will see the results 10 years down the line. So when to start, how to start, what to do, what not to do, what targets to take, all these come from the governance and the culture that is there within the organization. So organizations are doing this. Of course, they have put policies in place. They have processes embedded. Like at ICICI Bank, the premises that we actually take, we are ensuring that they meet certain green standards. Water, some of the easy things to do, like maintaining temperature at 24 degrees. Water faucets are are efficient. The equipments that we purchase are all star rated. So these are things that are already part of our SOPs. So that's how you have to keep driving it. It's a step at a time. That's how I look at it. And obviously, the buy-in from the management is very critical in this entire journey.
That's very interesting, ma'am. And I have one more question for you. When you have to present the project to the board of directors, what are the key parameters that they look at when they are passing the projects or when you are going to implement it?
So obviously, in these cases, having metrics and targets become very critical. Like, if you have a target for carbon neutrality, you understand that you need to transition and become carbon neutral. For carbon neutrality, there are certain aspects that you need to do. So, if you are looking at, say, procurement of renewable energy, but there is a certain limitation, you will need to do more capital spends. There are expenses that will be incurred for all these things. When the board and the management is looking at these aspects, commercial is one part, but if they understand that this is something that is required to be able to meet those targets, obviously they will agree to it. But it all depends on the maturity in that entire business journey. That's a very important thing. You cannot start on day one and announce a target and then try to retrofit things. That cannot happen. You need to get the management to understand these are the aspects, these are the measurements that are looked at, and these are the things that can be done to be able to ensure there is progress done. Step by step progress, you need to define KPIs for that. And that really takes it.